Pokémon is a series that we all know and love. It's been around for as long as we can remember. With most of us growing up with the series, you may not know though that Pokémon has nearly ended multiple times for various different reasons. With that being said, in today's video we're going to be going over 5 times Pokémon nearly ended completely. Of course, if you guys are excited for this video, be sure to drop a like down below and also leave a comment with any other times that weren't mentioned in the video that Pokemon nearly bit the dust. Of course, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe because we do daily Pokemon content. With all of that out of the way though guys, let's get into the video and take a look at some times Pokemon nearly ended forever. Starting things off and claiming the number 5 spot in today's top 5 video, and also the most well-known reason Pokemon nearly ended, was after Generation 2. The Pokemon Company president Ishihara had been speaking about the series to Nintendo in one of the Iwata Asks features on the official Nintendo site. He stated that, "I worked with the assumption that after we put out Gold and Silver, my work as far as Pokemon was concerned would be done. I didn't intend to make any more Pokemon titles. I even thought that once we entered the 21st century, it would be time for me to do something else entirely. I remember that when Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver were released, it felt like a burden had finally been lifted from my shoulders. We'd had our sights set on the finish line of Gold and Silver for so long, and now that we'd finally completed the major series running right through from Red and Blue, I felt I could say to Tajiri, I fulfilled my duty." Once we'd released Pokemon Gold and Silver, however, it was selling even faster than Red and Green. I couldn't very well get off the ride halfway through saying, "Nice work everyone, good luck from here on in." So basically, the Pokemon series was supposed to end after Pokemon Gold and Pokemon Silver, which is the reason that you can go to both regions in the Johto games, and then of course Hoenn is completely different. That is because everything after Gold and Silver was never planned. So you gotta be lucky that Gold and Silver sold so well, otherwise Pokemon would have finished all the way back in the 90s and we would never have seen any brand new Pokemon. So thankfully, Pokemon Gold and Silver sold as well as they did. Coming up next and claiming the number 4 spot in today's top 5 video is about the Pokemon anime and when that was supposed to end. So basically, the Pokemon anime was only supposed to run for a year and a half, which is pretty long for an anime that they didn't really have any faith in, and was supposed to finish after the first movie, Pokemon Mewtwo Strikes Back. There's even a clip on the internet of Misty holding hands with a small girl walking around a golden scenery. Now this is actually never been confirmed, but a few people believe this to be Ash's child because you can actually see Ash's Pikachu in the small clip as well. Now this was supposed to debut at the end of the movie and it would wrap up the whole series. So basically Ash and Misty go on to have a child and then that was that. Of course, Pokemon selling so well and the movie and the anime doing as well as they did basically scrapped that and they just carried on doing the Pokemon anime. So back then, there was actually supposed to be an ending. Now, who knows? They could still keep that ending, and whenever the Pokemon anime does actually end, they could always go back to that. Ash could go back to Cerulean City, meet with Misty again, years could pass, they could have a child, and then that could be that. Although it is kind of interesting to think that the Pokemon anime was supposed to end all the way back then with Ash actually having a child with Misty. But of course, that was never the case. Coming up next and claiming the number 3 spot in today's top 5 video as another reason that Pokemon nearly ended entirely is all about Generation 2 again, getting a bad name for itself now. So this is actually not very well known, but basically Pokemon almost ended during the creation of Generation 2. So even though the company knew at that point that they were going to end it after these games were released, these games were actually never even released entirely. So basically, they weren't able to get it to fit on the cartridge. They couldn't actually import the game onto the Game Boy cartridges. They weren't going to finish it if they couldn't get it to fit. So the whole reason that Pokemon nearly ended was because they could not get the software onto the game cartridge. It is actually thanks to the late legend Iwata that Gen 2 was even possible. He made a program that allowed it to fit on the cartridge himself. So if it wasn't for him, Pokemon would have not even had Generation 2, wouldn't have sold as well as it did, and they would never have carried on with the Pokemon games after Gold and Silver. So definitely owe a huge gratitude to him for creating that program, allowing the game cartridge to fit the actual game on. So big thank you to him, otherwise Pokemon would never have carried on. Coming up next and claiming the number 2 spot in today's top 5 video is something else to do with the Pokemon anime. Now this is of course one of Pokemon's biggest controversies that's ever happened, and it's all to do with one episode in particular. Now Pokemon has had several anime episodes removed from the rotation in Japan or the rest of the world. The most infamous of these episodes though is the Cyber Soldier Porygon episode. The episode made headlines worldwide when it caused 685 children to experience seizures and seizure-like symptoms caused by a repetitive flash of light. Although the offending sequence was caused by Pikachu's Thunderbolt actions, the episode's featured Pokemon, Porygon, has rarely been seen in future episodes, with appearances limited to one brief cameo appearance in the movie Pokemon Heroes and in one scene bumper later in Season 1. Its evolutions Porygon 2 and Porygon Z have only appeared in a brief part of the opening sequence of Pokemon the movie Kyurem vs. the Sword of Justice. So basically, a huge problem like this nearly broke down the whole Pokemon franchise. It nearly got labeled as something really badly, so instead of that happening, they of course cut off the episode entirely, stopped featuring Porygon and its evolutions pretty much in the anime series. I think if any other franchise not nearly as big as Pokemon had this happen to them, they probably wouldn't have been able to bounce back, but because of how big Pokemon was and how loved it was in a whole, it was luckily able to bounce back after this. So even though this was a very bad event, it nearly did end Pokemon, luckily it didn't. Finishing things off though and claiming the number 1 spot as the biggest reason the Pokemon nearly ended was actually before it even began. So if you hadn't heard, basically Tajiri came up with the idea of Pokemon when he used to catch bugs in his garden, and he saw 2 people playing with Game Boys, and he had kind of a vision of transferring those bug-like creatures onto the different Game Boy Advances. So he had the idea of Pokemon from that. So Tajiri signed with Nintendo, who trusted him based on his previous work with the company. Though according to Miyamoto, the man behind Mario and Zelda, Tajiri could never quite explain the concept to Nintendo properly. Still, with encouragement from Miyamoto, Tajiri and his team toiled away on the project for 6 long years. Although Game Freak very nearly went to bust in the process. Game Freak actually nearly went bankrupt during the creation of Pokemon. In fact, the financial situation got so bad that 5 people actually completely quit the project, and Tajiri stopped paying himself a wage and lived off his parents while he finished the project. So it got that bad that he couldn't actually make any money during the creation, and he had to live off of his parents' money, which is a very bad situation to be in. Unfortunately, by the time the project was finished in 1996, it seemed that the Game Boy hype had died down massively. So basically when they created it, they didn't think it was going to do well at all because the Game Boy hype had died down, and to be fair, if it wasn't for Creatures Inc., they wouldn't have even had enough money to fund the project because they basically gave the rest of the money but wanted 1/3 of the Pokemon kind of franchise in return. So they put a lot of faith into this project. Nintendo released Pokemon Red and Green in Japan on February the 27th, 1996, but the company apparently didn't expect very much at all from the games due to the Game Boy hype being down. Sales grew slowly, aided by a manga series and trading cards from publishing company Shokugan Inc., who saw potential in the franchise and decided to back it. But it wasn't until players discovered the existence of Mew, the ultra-rare legendary Pokemon, that the franchise really took off. Tajiri has said that the idea behind Mew was that it was a Pokemon you had to get by interacting. Apparently, the 151st Pokemon was actually coded into the game without Nintendo knowing. It was Tajiri's belief that a secret Pokemon would increase height, and he was correct. He was very, very correct. Japanese magazine CoroCoro announced a legendary Pokemon competition in which a Mew would be given to 20 lucky winners. The contest received 78,000 entrants and sales were bolstered as a result. Thanks to the newfound success of the games, Nintendo followed up with the release of Pokemon Blue in Japan. It was essentially the same as Red and Green, but with improved sound and graphics. With a successful series of games, manga, and trading cards already in the bag, the anime series of Pokemon made its debut in Japan on April the 1st, 1997. So that's how it went, guys. They basically nearly went bankrupt and completely stopped Pokemon. If it wasn't for a number of different things happening, Pokemon would never have even been created. So it's kind of insane to think what we'd all be playing today if these things never happened. But that does finish off today's video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did making it. It was very fun looking at all of the different times Pokemon nearly ended, because it kind of gives you a sense of how lucky we are that the company is actually around and we're getting Generation 8 this year. Of course, if you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to drop a like down below. I really do appreciate it. Leave a comment as well about your thoughts on the video, and subscribe as well if you're brand new. I have a couple other videos coming onto your screen in a second, so be sure to give them a watch if you do have the time. That is everything from me though, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing rest of your weekend, and until next time, peace.